I woke up this morning to find my life had been turned upside down. For 3 years, I had been living with my parents in Boston, paying 70% of their rent and bills to help them through retirement. Despite always being second best to my brother Jake, I thought we had a good arrangement. Then came the phone call at work. "Chaim, we need you to move out, but keep paying rent so Jake can have your room." I felt my heart drop into my stomach. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If this story resonates with you, please hit like and subscribe to join our community of real-life storytellers. Stick around to see how I handled this family betrayal. I have always been the responsible one in my family. At 28, I work as a software developer at a mid-sized tech company in downtown Boston. The pay is decent enough that I could afford my own place if I wanted to. But 3 years ago, when my father had his first health scare and medical bills started piling up, moving back home seemed like the right thing to do. Our family home is a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from the city. It is nothing fancy, but it has a small backyard where my dad used to barbecue during summer weekends and a kitchen where my mom taught me to cook traditional family recipes. When I moved back, I took my old bedroom on the second floor, the same room I had growing up with its faded blue walls and the small desk where I first learned to code. My arrangement with my parents was straightforward. I would pay 70% of the mortgage, utilities, and groceries. This allowed them to stretch their retirement savings and Social Security checks much further. In return, I got a place to stay close to work and the satisfaction of helping the people who raised me. At least that is what I thought was happening. My relationship with my parents was never particularly warm, but it was respectful. We ate dinner together most nights, watched game shows in the evening, and avoided controversial topics like politics or religion. They never seemed overly affectionate toward me, but I chalked that up to their old-school parenting style. I told myself they just were not the type to show emotions openly. Then there was my younger brother Jake. 4 years my junior at 24, Jake had always been the golden child of the family. Growing up, the contrast in how we were treated was subtle but unmistakable. Where I was expected to maintain straight, as Jake was celebrated for passing grades. When I made the honor roll, it was met with a nod and a good job. When Jake made the basketball team, it warranted a special dinner and new equipment. Jake was taller than me, more athletic, and according to my mother, blessed with the kind of face that opens doors. He cruised through high school on his charm and sports scholarships, then attended a state college where he majored in business administration, but spent most of his time at fraternity parties. I can still remember my 16th birthday when I received a second-hand laptop for coding, while Jake at 12 got the latest gaming console just because he had been doing so well lately. Or the time I graduated top of my class in computer science, and my parents skipped the ceremony for one of Jake's regular season basketball games. These memories stung, but I had made peace with them. Or so I thought. After college, Jake bounced between jobs, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months. He would quit because the manager did not appreciate his talents or get fired for showing up late too many times. Despite this, my parents always defended him, saying he was finding his path and too creative for routine work. Meanwhile, I had been at the same company since graduation, steadily climbing the ranks and building my career. Our relationship as brothers was distant, but not hostile. We exchanged obligatory birthday texts and made small talk during holidays, but we were not friends. I had accepted long ago that we were just different people with different values. He never showed any interest in my work or life, and I stopped keeping track of his latest job or girlfriend. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was debugging a particularly tricky piece of code when my phone lit up with my mother's name. I stepped away from my desk to answer it, expecting the usual request to pick up something from the store on my way home. "Chaim, we need to talk about the living arrangements," my mother said, without preamble. Her voice had that tone she used when she had already made up her mind about something. "What about them?" I asked, a sense of unease creeping in. "Jake lost his apartment. His roommate moved out unexpectedly, and he cannot afford the rent on his own. He needs to move back home." "Okay," I said slowly. "The house has 3 bedrooms. He can take the guest room." There was a pause before my mother continued. "The guest room is too small for him. He needs a proper bedroom. We think it would be best if you found your own place." I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "You want me to move out so Jake can have my room?" "Yes, but we would still need your financial contribution. Your father's medication costs have gone up, and we cannot manage the mortgage without your help." The request was so absurd that I actually laughed, thinking it must be some kind of joke. "Let me get this straight. You want me to move out, pay for my own place, and still pay rent to you guys so Jake can live in my room?" "It is not funny, Haim," my mother said sharply. "This is a family matter, and we all need to make sacrifices. Jake is going through a difficult time, and I am not." I countered, my voice rising despite my attempts to stay calm. "I have been supporting this household for 3 years. How is this fair?" "Life is not fair," she replied coldly. "This is about family responsibility. We need you to do this for us." When I got home that evening, both my parents were waiting in the living room. My father sat in his recliner, eyes fixed on the newspaper, though I doubted he was reading it. My mother stood by the window, arms crossed. "I assume Mom told you about Jake," I said, setting down my laptop bag. My father nodded without looking up. "It is just temporary until he gets back on his feet." "And how long will that take?" I asked. "Based on his track record, we could be talking months or years." "Do not be dramatic," my mother cut in. "Your brother is trying his best." "Is he?" "Because it sounds like he lost his job again and expects everyone else to pick up the slack." "He did not lose his job," my mother corrected. "The company downsized. It was not his fault." I took a deep breath. "And why exactly do I need to move out? Why cannot he take the guest room? He needs space for all his things," my mother explained, as if it were the most reasonable request in the world. "And he needs privacy. The guest room is too close to ours, and I do not need privacy." I shot back. My father finally looked up from his paper. "Chaim, we have thought about this, and it is the best solution for everyone. We are giving you 2 weeks to find a new place. 2 weeks. That is barely enough time to find an apartment in this market, let alone move." My mother's expression did not soften. "I am sure someone with your salary can figure it out." Throughout the entire conversation, my father remained mostly silent, offering no support or alternative suggestions. His silence felt like a betrayal worse than my mother's demands. When I looked to him for some sign that he thought this was unfair, he simply shrugged and said, "Your mother has made up her mind." By the time I went to bed that night, the 2-week countdown had begun. I lay awake for hours replaying the conversation and wondering how my own family could treat me with such callous disregard. The days following that conversation were some of the most stressful of my life. I spent every lunch break and evening frantically searching apartment listings, calling real estate agents, and trying to figure out how I could possibly find a decent place in Boston's overpriced housing market within 2 weeks. Meanwhile, at home, the atmosphere was tense. My parents went about their daily routines as if nothing had changed, except now they were discussing paint colors for Jake's room and clearing space in the garage for his belongings. It was as if my presence in the house had already been erased. I tried reasoning with them several times. I suggested paying a reduced rent since I would not be living there anymore. I offered to convert the basement into a bedroom for Jake. I even proposed helping Jake find a job in my company's customer support department, which was always hiring. Each suggestion was met with the same response. "This is what is best for the family." My mother would not budge, and my father would not contradict her. 3 days after the initial bombshell, I received a text from Jake that made my blood boil. "Heard you are moving out. Thanks for the room upgrade, bro. I called him immediately. "Is this funny to you?" I demanded. When he answered, Jake laughed. "Calm down, man. It is just business. Mom and Dad need help, and you make way more money than me. So why do not you get a stable job and help them, instead of mooching off everyone?" "Look," Jake said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We both know how this works. You are the responsible one. I am the fun one. Besides, I have been planning this move for months. My lease was up, and I told Mom I was thinking about coming home. She was thrilled. Months, I repeated, feeling sick. You have been planning this for months, and no one thought to tell me until 2 weeks before I am supposed to be out. We knew you would make a big deal out of it," Jake said casually. "Anyway, do not leave any of your old stuff in the closet. I need all the space." After hanging up, I sat at my desk shaking with anger. Not only had my brother manipulated the situation, but my parents had been complicit in the plan, keeping me in the dark until the last possible moment. The apartment hunt was not going well either. Boston's rental market was brutal, with tiny studios going for astronomical prices. Anything remotely affordable would require a commute so long it would add hours to my workday, and everything required first and last month's rent plus a security deposit, which meant thousands of dollars up front. The stress began taking a toll on my health and work. I started making careless mistakes in my code, missing deadlines, and zoning out during meetings. My team lead, Maria, pulled me aside after I blanked during a client presentation. "Everything okay, Chaim? This is not like you." I considered giving her a generic "I am fine," but found myself spilling the whole sordid story instead. Maria listened without interrupting her expression, growing increasingly concerned. "That is seriously messed up," she said when I finished. "No wonder you cannot focus. Have you talked to HR about taking a few personal days? You might need the time to apartment hunt." Thanks to Maria's suggestion, I was able to take 3 days off to focus on finding a place. My friend Alan came with me to view apartments, providing moral support and a second opinion. "I still cannot believe your parents are doing this," Alan said, as we drove to yet another viewing. "After everything you have done for them." "I keep thinking there must be something I am missing," I admitted. "Some reason that would make all of this make sense." Alan shook his head. "Sometimes people just suck, even family, especially family. Maybe it is time to cut them off completely." "I cannot just abandon them," I said automatically, then paused, realizing how conditioned I was to put their needs first. "Why not? They are clearly willing to abandon you." I did not have a good answer. The psychological impact was profound. I had trouble sleeping, lost my appetite, and found myself cycling through emotions: anger, hurt, betrayal, and a deep, gnawing anxiety about the future. I started questioning everything about my relationship with my parents. Had I been nothing more than a cash cow to them all along? Were all the family dinners and holiday celebrations just a facade to keep me contributing financially? I found myself reviewing memories from my childhood, seeing them in a new, harsher light. The way my accomplishments were downplayed while Jake's were celebrated. The times my needs were set aside for his. The pattern was clear now, and it stretched back as far as I could remember. Meanwhile, Jake had started moving boxes into the house, even though my 2-week deadline had not yet passed. I came home one day to find several of his possessions already in my room, pushed into corners as if staking a claim on the territory. My parents' behavior toward me changed subtly too. There were no more thank yous when I paid the bills. Instead, there were comments about how I should be saving more with my salary, or how I wasted money on takeout when I was too exhausted to cook. It was as if now that I was on my way out, they no longer needed to maintain the pretense of appreciation. The final straw came one evening when I returned home earlier than expected. I overheard my parents and Jake in the kitchen, not realizing I was in the house. "Once Chaim moves out, we will have the best of both worlds," my mother was saying. "His money and your company." "I just hope he does not flake on the payments," my father added. "We cannot afford the mortgage without him." "He will not," Jake said confidently. Chaim is too responsible to leave you guys hanging. That is why he is so boring. They laughed, and I felt something break inside me. I had been clinging to the hope that despite everything they still cared about me as a son, not just as a source of income. That hope died in the sound of their laughter. Later that night, I discovered Jake had been in my room again. He had used my computer without permission, and worse, had broken a model spaceship I had built with my grandfather before he passed away. It was one of the few mementos I had of him, and now it lay in pieces, carelessly swept into a corner. When I confronted Jake about it, he shrugged it off. It is just a toy. Grow up. I looked at the broken model, at Jake's dismissive face, and at my parents standing behind him silent, as always when it came to defending me. Something shifted in that moment. I was done being the family doormat. The apartment I finally found was a one-bedroom unit in a converted brownstone about 40 minutes from my office by public transit. It was overpriced and smaller than my room at my parents' house, but it was available immediately. The catch was the upfront cost, first and last month's rent, plus a security deposit totaled nearly $6,000, a significant chunk of my savings. When I told my parents I had found a place and would be moving out that weekend, their first question was not about the apartment itself, but about when I would transfer the first rent payment to them. Actually, I said, looking them both in the eye, I will not be sending you any more money. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother recovered first. What do you mean? She demanded. We had an agreement. No, you had an expectation, I corrected her. And that expectation ended when you decided I was not worth keeping around. This is not about you not being worth keeping around, my father protested weakly. It is about helping your brother through a rough patch. A rough patch he created himself, I pointed out, and one that apparently requires me to pay for 2 places while he pays for none. My mother's face flushed with anger. We need that money, Chaim. We have bills, your father's medication, the property taxes coming up. I know, I said calmly. I have been paying all of those things for 3 years, but now I have my own place to pay for my own bills, my own life to fund, so you are just going to abandon us. My mother's voice rose. After everything we have done for you, I laughed a short, bitter sound. What exactly have you done for me lately? Besides kick me out of my home to make room for your favorite child, that is not fair, my father interjected. None of this is fair, I shot back. But it is reality. My reality now includes rent for my own place, which means I cannot afford to subsidize yours anymore. We will lose the house, my mother said, tears forming in her eyes. I might have been moved if I had not just overheard her true feelings days earlier. You have options, I said. Jake can get a job. You can downsize. You can take in another tenant. But I am not going to work myself to the bone paying for 2 households while Jake sits around doing nothing. As if summoned by his name, Jake sauntered into the room. What is going on? Your brother is refusing to help the family, my mother said, her voice thick with accusation. Jake turned to me with a smirk. Seriously, bro, that is cold, says the guy who has not contributed a dime to this household in years. I retorted. When exactly are you planning to get a job, Jake? He shrugged. When the right opportunity comes along. I am not going to settle for some dead-end position like you did. My dead-end position has been keeping a roof over all our heads, I said. But not anymore. I am done being the family ATM. So you are just going to leave us hanging. Jake's smirk had faded, replaced by genuine concern. You know what I said, a realization dawning. I think I am. You 3 figure it out. I am sure the golden child can save the day. The argument escalated from there. My mother accused me of betrayal. My father pleaded for compromise. Jake alternated between mocking me and expressing panic at the idea of having to find work quickly. The final blow came when I discovered Jake had not just broken my model spaceship. He had also been selling some of my belongings online. I found listings for my rare book collection and some vintage video games on his marketplace profile. When confronted, he claimed he thought I did not want that stuff anymore since I was moving. That night, as I packed my things, I received an unexpected visitor, Mrs. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbor who had lived next door since I was a child, knocked on my bedroom door. I heard raised voices, she said, her eyes full of concern. "Everything okay, Chaim?" I gave her a brief version of what was happening. To my surprise, she nodded, as if it confirmed something she had long suspected. "I always saw how differently they treated you boys," she said softly. "It broke my heart. You were such a good kid, always helping me with my groceries and computer problems. Jake never even said hello unless his parents were watching. I thought I was imagining it sometimes," I admitted. "You were not. And you should know." She hesitated, then continued. "I overheard your mother talking to my daughter at the block party last summer. She was boasting about how you would always support them financially, even after you moved out. Said it was the least you could do after all they had given you." Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head. I almost said something then, but I did not want to cause trouble. Her words cemented my resolve. This had been their plan all along, to extract maximum financial benefit from me while giving preferential treatment to Jake. I was never meant to be anything more than the responsible son who paid the bills. That revelation led me to check my bank statements more carefully. To my horror, I discovered several unexplained withdrawals from my savings account over the past year. Small amounts, 200 here, 300 there. Nothing I would immediately notice. But they added up to nearly $5,000. When I checked the signature card on the account, I remembered I had added my parents as authorized users years ago in case of emergency. They had been helping themselves to my savings while simultaneously accepting my rent and bill payments. The betrayal was complete. The next day, I consulted with a lawyer about my options. While there was little I could do about the money they had already taken since they were authorized users, I could protect myself going forward. I closed the joint account and opened a new one at a different bank. I documented all my possessions before moving out and made it clear that anything missing would result in a police report for theft. With the help of Alan and my colleague Susan, who had become a supportive friend through this ordeal, I created a new financial plan. It would be tight for a few months, but I could manage my new expenses without dipping into what remained of my savings too much. On my final day at the house, I gathered my family in the living room for one last conversation. I laid out exactly how I felt, what I had discovered, and what would happen next. "I am moving out today," I told them. "I will not be contributing to this household financially anymore. I have closed our shared account and reported my bank cards as stolen." "You cannot do that," my mother protested. "We are family. Family does not steal from each other," I replied. "Family does not treat one member as an ATM and another as royalty. You made your choice when you decided Jake's comfort was worth my displacement. Now, I am making mine." My father, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen him, finally spoke up. "We never meant for it to go this far. We just needed help, and you were always so responsible, and you took advantage of that responsibility," I said. "That stops today." Jake, for once, had nothing clever to say. The reality that he would now need to step up had finally sunk in. "What about the mortgage?" he asked quietly. "And Dad's medicine. Those are your problems now," I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Welcome to adulthood, little brother." With that, I walked out of my childhood home, not as the dutiful son who had sacrificed for years, but as a man who had finally learned to value himself. The first month in my new apartment was both liberating and terrifying. I had never truly lived on my own, before having gone from college dorms straight to my parents' house. There were practical challenges figuring out how to budget for groceries, remembering to buy essentials like toilet paper before running out dealing with a leaky faucet without calling my dad. But the emotional adjustment was far harder. Despite everything I missed, the routine of family dinners and the comfort of familiar surroundings. Some nights I would lie awake, second-guessing my decision, wondering if I had been too harsh, if I should have found a compromise that would keep the peace without completely sacrificing my dignity. Those moments of doubt were inevitably followed by reminders of why I had left. My mother called regularly, her messages alternating between guilt trips and urgent requests for money. My father texted occasionally, his messages more subdued, but still focused on their financial struggles. Jake remained silent, which was a blessing. I learned from Mrs. Rodriguez, who still checked in on me, that things at the house had quickly deteriorated after I left. My parents had fallen behind on the mortgage. Jake had taken a part-time job at a local electronics store, but quit after 2 weeks because he could not handle the early mornings. They had started selling furniture to cover expenses. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt a lingering sense of responsibility that was hard to shake. I had been conditioned my entire life to put their needs first, and breaking that pattern was not as simple as moving out. I found solace in creating my new space. I painted the walls of my apartment, a warm sage green hung artwork I genuinely liked rather than family photos that carried complicated emotions, and splurged on a comfortable couch that became my favorite reading spot. Slowly, this place began to feel like mine in a way my room at my parents' house never had. The friendship with Susan deepened during this time. We started having lunch together regularly, and she introduced me to her circle of friends who welcomed me without question. For the first time, I was building relationships based on mutual respect and shared interests, not obligation or history. About 3 months after I moved out, I received an unexpected visit. My father was standing outside my apartment building when I returned from work one evening. He looked thinner, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame, his face more lined than I remembered. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual authority. We went to a coffee shop around the corner, neutral territory, where neither of us would have the home court advantage. "Your mother does not know I am here," he said after ordering. "She would not approve." "Why are you here, Dad?" He took a deep breath. "To apologize. We were wrong, Chaim. I was wrong. I let your mother and Jake steamroll over you because it was easier than standing up for what was right." He looked down at his coffee. "I have had a lot of time to think since you left. Without your financial support, we have had to make serious changes. Your mother is working part-time at the library. I have cut back on some medications. Jake." He paused. "Jake? What Jake has moved out?" "He could not handle the new rules your mother implemented once we realized how dire our situation was. He is living with friends, I think. He does not call much." I felt a complex mix of emotions, satisfaction that Jake had faced consequences, concern for my parents' health, and a small petty part of me that was glad they were struggling without me. "I am sorry about your medications," I said finally. "Is there anything dangerous you are going without?" He shook his head. "Nothing life-threatening, just comfort medications. We are managing." We sat in silence for a moment, the gulf between us both physical and emotional. "I miss you, son," he said eventually. "Not your money. You. The house is quiet without you. Your mother would never admit it, but she misses you too." I wanted to believe him, but years of being second best had made me cautious. "It is going to take time, Dad. I cannot just forget everything that happened. I understand. I just hope someday you might consider being part of our lives again, on your terms." It was the first time my father had ever acknowledged my right to set boundaries, and it felt like a small but significant shift. 2 more months passed. I excelled at work, earning a promotion that came with a welcome salary increase. I joined a support group for adults dealing with family estrangement, where I found people who understood the complicated grief of having living parents who had betrayed your trust. I started therapy, working through the years of conditional love and subtle favoritism that had shaped my self-worth. My mother eventually reached out too, though her version of an apology was more about how much they had suffered since I left than about acknowledging the hurt they had caused me. Still, it was a start. Jake and I had our first post-estrangement conversation 6 months after I moved out. He called late one night, his voice uncharacteristically humble. "I screwed up," he admitted. "I thought everything would be easy if you kept paying the bills. I never realized how much you were actually contributing or how hard it would be to replace that." "What are you doing now?" I asked, curious, despite myself. "Working 2 jobs," he said with a sigh. "Retail during the day, bartending at night. It sucks, but I am making rent, and I am looking into community college classes. Turns out, business administration is not much use without actual skills." It was the most mature I had ever heard him sound. "I am sorry about your stuff," he added, "the model and the books. It was a shitty thing to do. If I ever have money to spare, I will try to replace them." I doubted that day would come anytime soon, but the acknowledgement mattered. Over time, we established a new kind of relationship with my family. I visited occasionally for dinner, but always left before it got late. I sent birthday and holiday gifts, but they were thoughtful rather than expensive. When my parents faced a genuine emergency, like when their water heater burst, I helped with the repair costs, but as a gift, not an obligation. My mother still occasionally made comments about how much easier things had been when I lived with them, but my father would quickly shut them down. Jake and I developed a cautious friendship based on our shared experience of finally growing up, albeit at different times and in different ways. The most profound change, however, was within myself. I learned that loving someone does not mean sacrificing your own well-being for theirs. I discovered that I was capable of creating boundaries and sticking to them even when guilt and obligation pulled at me. I built a life that was truly mine, with relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. The betrayal that forced me out of my childhood home ultimately gave me the push I needed to find my true home within myself. I no longer measured my worth by how much I could give others or how much they approved of me. Instead, I found value in my own happiness, my own choices, and my own definition of family. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes the most painful experiences teach us the most important lessons. My parents and Jake showed me what family should not be, which helped me recognize and build what family could be: a circle of people who respect, support, and genuinely care for each other, not for what they can get in return. What painful lessons have you learned from family dynamics? Have you ever had to set boundaries with loved ones? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to choose yourself sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, true family supports your growth, not just their own comfort.